Hi guys, it's Angela from Berso Knits. In today's tutorial I'm going to be showing you how to crochet these 3 different bucket hats. First I'll show you the basic hat pattern and then how to make the different appliques to go on the front. I'm going to be using US terminology, and if you have any questions leave me a comment below and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Let's start with the materials you're going to need to make the different hats. For the daisy hat, you're going to need 2 balls of chunky or bulky wool, and that's weight category 5, in yellow and white. I used the Flutterby wool by James C. Brett in shades 30 and 1. To make the daisy, you're also going to need some 100% cotton DK yarn. I used the Rico Rumi brand in the shades 1 and 26. You're also going to need a 6mm crochet hook and a 2.5mm crochet hook, and those are sizes J and C in the US. And finally, some other materials you will need are your scissors, yarn needle, stitch marker, and pins. For the strawberry hat, you can see that the materials are pretty much the same, it's just the colours that we've changed. So again, we're going to need 2 balls of chunky or bulky wool, this time in green and white, and I'm using shades 11 and 1 from James C. Brett. And in our 100% cotton DK yarn for making the strawberry itself, I used the Rico Rumi brand in shades 5, 29 and 49. And once again, you're going to need your crochet hooks, same sizes as before, and your other tools. Finally, for the watermelon hat, you're going to need, again, the same materials, except in different colours. So for the watermelon hat, you're going to need pink and white chunky yarn. I am using shades 34 and 1 from James C. Brett. And for the 100% cotton DK yarn, you are going to need some bright pink, some green, and some white and black. And I am using shades 13, 44, 1, and 60, all from the Rico Rumi brand. So that's our materials all done. Let's get started. To start the top of the hat, I'm going to use a magic ring. Now there's lots of different ways to do this. I'm just going to make a loop, grab my yarn and pull it through, and I'm going to chain 1 to secure. Into my magic ring, I am now going to single crochet 8 stitches. Okay, now I've single crocheted my 8 stitches, I'm just going to pull my magic ring closed. And I'm going to put a stitch marker in my last stitch. Now before we move on, I'm just going to give you some tips for crocheting with this chunkier yarn. My first tip, if you're using a chunkier yarn, is to stick to, at least in the beginning, the more simple stitches. So single crochet, half double crochet, double crochet. Now that's not a problem for this pattern, as we're actually going to be using single crochet for the majority of the hat. My second tip is it can become difficult to see where your stitches are, so some tips and tricks for trying to find your stitches. First tip is to look to see if you can find this V on the top that we're looking for that shows us where our stitch is. Okay, so we can insert underneath that V. If you're crocheting with a wool where you can't clearly see where these V shapes are, then my next tip or trick is to use the feel rather than the sight of the stitches. Okay, so you can use your finger behind your work to feel whereabouts the hole is, so when you can feel your hook coming through underneath the stitch. And you will get used to it after a few rows, you will be able to more easily tell where the next stitch is and be able to feel for it in your work. If you're really struggling to find your stitch, hold your work up to a light source, and if you hold your work up you can see more clearly where the stitches are, as I'm showing you on the screen now. My next tip is to use your stitch marker so that you know where the end of your round is, and this will make it a lot easier to count your work and to check that you haven't skipped any stitches along the way. My final tip is that if you make a mistake and you need to pull your yarn out, then you should try and do it very gently because it can get stuck, and also when you unravel it, it can lead to the yarn becoming a bit frayed and a bit broken. If you do make a mistake when you are using chunkier yarn, don't worry about it. With this type of yarn, the mistakes aren't very visible, but unless it's really visible or you know that you're a real perfectionist and it's going to really bug you to have that mistake there, I would just leave it, and you will probably be the only person to know it is there. So for our second row, we are actually going to increase in all 8 stitches around. So remember that an increase is single crochet 2. So I'm going to single crochet 2 in the first stitch. And in the next stitch. And I'm going to repeat that process 6 more times until I'm left with 16 stitches. To start row 3, I'm going to single crochet into the first stitch. I'm going to increase into the second stitch. And I'm going to repeat that pattern 7 more times until I'm left with 24 stitches. For the start of row 4, I'm first going to single crochet 2 stitches. And then I'm going to increase in the next stitch. And I'm going to repeat that pattern, so single crochet 2, increase in the next stitch, 7 more times until I'm left with 32 stitches. For the 5th row, I'm going to start by single crocheting 3. And then I'm going to increase in the next stitch. And I'm going to repeat that pattern, so single crochet 3, increase in the next stitch, 7 more times until I'm left with 40 stitches. To start the 6th round, I'm going to single crochet 4, I'm then going to increase in the next stitch. And I'm going to repeat that pattern, so single crochet 4, increase in the next stitch 7 more times until I'm left with 48 stitches. For row 7, I'm going to start by single crocheting 5. And then I'm going to increase in the next stitch. And I'm going to repeat that pattern, so single crochet 5, increase in the next stitch 7 more times until I'm left with 56 stitches. For the 8th row, the last row of increases, I'm going to start by single crocheting 6. And I'm going to increase into the next stitch. And I'm going to repeat that pattern, so single crochet 6, increase in the next stitch 7 more times until I'm left with 64 stitches. The top of my hat now measures about 6.5 inches in diameter. This will fit someone who has roughly a 21 to 22 inch head. If you have a slightly smaller head, you could skip row 8 so that you end with 56 stitches before continuing. If you have a slightly larger head and you want to add another row, you would need to, for your next row, single crochet 7 stitches and then increase in the next stitch all the way around until you are left with 72 stitches. Then you can move on to the next step. All of this information is on the screen at the moment, so pause here while you make your decision. Now what I need to do is change the direction of the hat, so this will be the top, and I need to change the direction so that we can start crocheting down the side of the hat. So in order to do that, I'm going to complete 64 front post single crochets. Okay, so the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to go around the post. Now the post of the stitch is this part here, so not the top where we would normally insert our hook, and we're going to go around at the front of our work. Okay, so I'm going to go in the right hand side of the stitch. I'm going to come up the other side of the post. So now you can see the post is actually on my hook. And then I'm just going to work it like a normal single crochet. I'm going to pull my yarn through and then finish it off. So let's try that again. I'm going to go behind the stitch, bring up my hook next to it, so now my post is on my hook. I'm going to wrap my yarn, pull it through, and then finish it like a normal single crochet. Okay, so I'm going to do that all the way around until I've completed 64 front post single crochets. Now that we've completed our row of front post single crochet, you should be able to, on the back of the work, see this ridge around the edge. That's how you know you've done it right. From rows 10 to 20, I am now going to complete 11 rows of single crochet. So I'm going to single crochet in all 64 stitches around 11 times. I'm going to speed this up now, otherwise we'll be here all day, so feel free to pause it here while you complete those 11 rows. Now that I've finished my 11 rows of crochet, I'm just going to turn this inside out. So we can see we've got the real hat shape there at the top now. I suggest you try your hat on at this point. It should measure about 3.5 to 4 inches down the side, and when you try it on, the bottom of the hat should sit on the tops of your ears. If at this point you want to make the sides a bit longer or shorter, you can make that decision now. And now we're going to change direction again to make the brim. So if you remember, we insert our hook behind the stitch, come up the other side of the post. The post is what we call this straight line here. Grab my yarn, pull it through, and then single crochet as normal. So I'm going to complete that all the way along this row until I'm back at the beginning again. Now hopefully you can see that I've changed direction again for the brim, and you can see the ridge here that is the result of us changing direction. For our next row 22, I'm going to start by single crocheting 7. I'm then going to increase into the next stitch. I'm going to repeat that pattern, so single crochet 7, increase in the next stitch 7 more times until I'm left with 72 stitches. Now if you change the size of the crown of the hat, your increases will be slightly different on this row, and I'll put those on the screen now so that you can see what you need to complete. To start the next row, I'm going to single crochet 8, and then I'm going to increase into the next stitch. I'm going to repeat that pattern, so single crochet 8, increase in the next stitch 7 more times until I'm left with 80 stitches. Again, if you made a slightly smaller or larger crown, I've put on the screen the instructions that you need to follow for this row. For the third and final row of increases, we're going to start by single crocheting 9, then I'm going to increase in the next stitch. I'm going to repeat that pattern of single crochet 9, increase in the next stitch 7 more times until I'm left with 88 stitches. If you're making a smaller or larger hat, make sure you check the instructions on the screen now. For my next row, I'm going to complete 1 row of single crochet. So I'm going to single crochet in every stitch around, which for this size is 88 stitches. So I've just stopped 1 stitch before the end, and I'm going to attach my white yarn now. So I'm going to go into the stitch like a normal single crochet. I'm going to pull my yarn through, and then to make sure that it's an invisible start for my yarn, I'm going to pick up my white yarn and I'm going to thread that through my 2 loops. I'm just going to replace my stitch marker. For the next row, to make sure I get a really clean line for my colour change, I'm actually just going to slip stitch in every stitch around. So in order to slip stitch, I need to go into my stitch. I'm going to pull my yarn through, but instead of putting my yarn round and pulling through these 2 loops, I'm just going to pull the first loop over the second loop, and that's my slip stitch. Okay, so I'm not adding height on this round, I'm just making sure that we get a clean line for the colour change. So if we do that again, grab my yarn and pull it through, and then rather than wrapping around and finishing like a normal single crochet, I'm just going to pull the second loop over there. Okay, and I'm going to repeat that all the way around until I get back to the beginning. Now that I've finished that row, I can snip my green yarn, which I can weave in later. The next row is potentially the most fiddly of all of the rows, and because we're going to go into the back loop. If you remember, we talked about the V of the stitches before. Now to crochet in the back loop, we're just going to go in the middle of the V and just single crochet in the back loop. For the next row, I'm going to do 1 row of single crochet all the way around. So I'm going to single crochet in all 88 stitches. If you're happy with how it looks at this stage, you can leave it as it is. The next step is to add the lace frill around the edge, but you might be happy with the block colour change. We're going to first chain 3. And then we're going to skip the first stitch, so this one here, and we're going to go into the second stitch and single crochet 1 stitch. Okay, so if I repeat that again, I'm going to chain 3, 1, 2, 3. I'm going to skip the next stitch and then I'm going to single crochet in the following stitch. So now you can see I've got these little lace shells on the edge, and I'm going to repeat that pattern. So chain 3, skip 1 and single crochet in the next stitch all the way around until I get back to the beginning. And I'm just going to snip my yarn end and I'm going to pull it through. And there's my bucket hat, and I'm just going to weave in my ends and then I'm going to start work on the applique for the front. Now that I've finished my hat, and it doesn't matter which colour you have gone for, we are now going to work on the crochet detail that's going to go on the front of our hat. We're going to start with the strawberry hat. To start my strawberry, I'm going to have to start with a slip knot. Now to make a slip knot, I just wrap the yarn clockwise around my thumb and then I pull it off, and I take my working yarn, push it through the loop to the other side and grab it with my hook, and then I just pull tight. I'm then going to start by chaining 13. So to chain, I'm going to wrap my yarn clockwise around my hook, then I'm just going to twist my hook to grab it and pull it through the loop I've already made. Okay, I'll do that again. Okay, so I'm going to chain 13 in total. Now I'm going to double crochet into the 4th chain from the hook. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So to double crochet, I'm going to wrap my yarn around. I'm going to go into my 4th chain, to grab my yarn and pull it through, and I have 3 loops on my hook. I'm going to wrap round and pull through the first 2 loops, and then wrap round and pull through the second 2 loops. I'm going to repeat that again into the same stitch, so that I've done 2 into that same stitch. Into the next chain along, I'm also going to double crochet 2 stitches. So 1, 2. I'm then going to double crochet 3 single double crochets into the next 3 stitches. I'm then going to half double crochet into the next stitch. So to half double crochet, I'm going to wrap around just like I would for double crochet, to go into the stitch and pull my yarn through, so I have my 3 loops. This time I'm going to wrap around and pull through all 3. I'm now going to single crochet into the next 3 stitches. Okay, so now I just have 1 stitch left at the end of my chain, and I'm going to go into this stitch and single crochet 3 stitches into that 1 loop at the end. I'm now going to hold my work like this, and I'm going to crochet back along this foundation row of chains. So in my first 3 stitches, I'm just going to single crochet. I'm then going to half double crochet like I did on the other side. I'm then going to double crochet in the next 3 stitches. I'm going to double crochet 2 into the next stitch. And then in my final stitch, I am going to double crochet 3, all in 1 stitch. Now I've got back to the beginning, I'm going to slip stitch into the top of this chain 3. So that's my first round of the strawberry done, and you should now have 27 stitches. For the second row, I'm going to start by chaining 3. And that's going to count as my first double crochet. I'm then going to double crochet into the same stitch that my chain 3 is coming out of. I'm then going to double crochet 2 into the next 2 stitches. I'm then going to double crochet 1 in the next 4 stitches. I'm then going to half double crochet 1, and I'm going to single crochet 4. In the final stitch on the end, I'm just going to single crochet 3 into that 1 stitch. Now working back along this other side, I'm going to start by single crocheting 4. I'm then going to half double crochet 1. I'm going to double crochet into the next 4 stitches. I'm then going to double crochet 2 into the next 4 stitches. So 1, 2, and I'm going to repeat that 3 more times until I get to the end of the row. And then I'm just going to slip stitch into the top of this chain 3 from the start of the row. So there's the end of my second row, and we should have 35 stitches. Okay, to start this final row, I'm going to start by chaining 1. I'm then going to single crochet into the same stitch that my chain 1 is coming out of. I'm then going to increase, so I'm going to single crochet 2 into the next 2 stitches. I'm then going to single crochet into the next 12 stitches. Now I've reached this final stitch at the end, I am going to single crochet 3 into that stitch, just like I've done on the previous 2 rounds. I'm now going to single crochet into the next 14 stitches. And in the final 4 stitches of this round, I'm going to increase, so single crochet 2 into all 4 stitches. And I'm just going to slip stitch back into the first stitch of the round. I'm going to cut my yarn and I'm going to pull that through. And there's my strawberry base complete. To make the leaf that goes at the top of the strawberry, first you need to create a slip knot. And then you're going to chain 8. You're then going to double crochet into the 4th stitch from the hook. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm going to wrap around, go into the 4th chain, flip through the first 2, through the second 2. I'm going to double crochet in the next stitch as well. And then I'm going to half double crochet in the next 2 stitches. And in my final stitch, I'm going to slip stitch. I'm going to repeat that 2 more times. So into chain 8, I'm going to double crochet into the 4th chain from the hook. So now I've done 2 double crochets. I'm going to half double crochet in the next 2 stitches. And I'm going to slip stitch in the final stitch. And I'm going to repeat that 1 more time. Now that I've finished my 3 leaves, I'm going to slip stitch into the top of this middle leaf here. So just insert your hook and slip stitch in there so that your hook is more central. I'm then going to chain 6. Then, starting in the 2nd chain from the hook, I'm going to slip stitch 5. And then to finish, I'm just going to slip stitch into the top of my original leaf. I'm then going to snip my yarn and pull it through. And there are the leaves and stalk for my strawberry. I'm now going to sew my leaves to the top of my strawberry. So I'm going to thread my needle with the yarn tail. I'm going to pin the leaves in place at the top. And I'm going to sew around the outside of the leaves to the strawberry. I'm now going to take a length of my pale yellow yarn and to thread my needle and put a knot in the end. I'm then going to bring my needle up in this very bottom center stitch between the second and the third row. I'm then going to go up 1 stitch. I'm then going to do a stitch to the right hand side. And I'm going to do the same on the other side, so on the left hand side. So there's my 3 bottom seeds. I'm now going to go up this left hand side between rows 2 and 3 on the left. And each time I'm going to skip 1 stitch. So I've skipped this one here, and then I'm going to go up 1 stitch. I'm now going to go up the other side and do the exact same thing. I'm then going to come down to between rows 1 and 2 here and do the exact same thing. I'm now going to come to between rows 1 and 2 on the left hand side. And finally, I'm going to come to the very center and repeat the process one more time. And now I'm just going to weave in my ends, and then my strawberry is ready to be sewn onto the front of my hat. You'll probably want to try your hat on and then hold the strawberry in place to see where it looks best on you. I'm going to be putting it just above this brim line here. I'm going to put a few pins in to hold it in place. And I'm going to thread my yarn tail. I'm going to go into the hat. And I'm going to sew all the way around. So there's my finished strawberry hat. Let's move on to the daisy hat. So first things first, you need to make a magic ring. And I'm going to single crochet 6 stitches into my magic ring. And I'm just going to pull that closed. And now for my second row, I'm going to increase, so single crochet 2 into all 6 stitches around until I'm left with 12 stitches. Now that I've finished my 2 rows, I'm going to slip stitch into the next stitch. I'm going to snip my yarn and I'm going to pull that through. I'm now going to attach my white yarn to somewhere around the outside of the center. And I'm going to single crochet in all 12 stitches around. And I'm just going to slip stitch back into that first stitch. Now you can see that the center of my daisy is puffed up a little bit. I'm now going to chain 12. Now that I've chained 12, I'm going to treble crochet into the 4th chain away from the hook. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So to treble crochet, I need to wrap the yarn around my hook twice. I'm going to go into the 4th chain and pull my yarn through. So I'm left with 4 loops on my hook. I'm going to go through the first 2, to wrap around and go through the second 2, and then wrap around and go through the last 2. So that's my first treble crochet. I'm now going to treble crochet into the next stitch. In the next stitch, I'm now going to double crochet. So I'm going to wrap my yarn around my hook. I'm going to go into the chain to pull my yarn through. I'm going to wrap around and go through the first 2 loops. And I'm going to wrap around and go through the second 2 loops. I'm going to repeat that again. So now I've done 2 treble crochets and 2 double crochets. In the next chain, I'm going to do a half double crochet. So I'm going to wrap around as though I was going to do a double crochet. I'm going to go into the next chain, pull my yarn through, and this time I'm going to wrap around and go through all 3 stitches. I'm now going to half double crochet into the next chain as well. Now I'm going to single crochet into the next 2 stitches. So now I'm going to skip this next stitch and I'm going to slip stitch into the stitch after. So there's the first petal of my daisy done. I'm now going to repeat that 5 more times until I'm left with 6 petals. And I'm just going to slip stitch back into this first stitch. So there's the first round of my petals done for my daisy. I'm now going to single crochet in every stitch around the petal. As I'm going up the right hand side of the petal, I'm actually just going to crochet in the back loop because otherwise it will leave a little bit of a hole. So I'm just going to single crochet in all of these stitches up the first side of the petal. Now that I've reached the top of my petal, I can see the 3 chains from my chain 3, and I'm going to single crochet into all 3 of those. And now I'm going to single crochet in all of the stitches back along the other side, but in both loops this time. Now that I've reached the space between the 2 petals, I can see that this here is the stitch where I slip stitched into on the previous round, and I'm just going to slip stitch in there again, and then I'm going to continue single crocheting around each petal. Now I'm just going to slip stitch back into my first stitch. I'm going to snip my yarn and I'm going to pull that through. So in order to get my pollen to stand up a bit more like this, all I've done is taken my needle and brought it up around the center of the flower, that down all the way around, and then once I've gone all the way around, I just pulled on this to make it tighter, and then the center of the flower stands up like on a real flower. I'm now just going to weave in the rest of these ends, and then it's ready for sewing onto the front of the hat. Assembling the daisy hat is quite simple. All I need to do is pin my daisy where I'd like it on the front. Now I'm going to put it just above where the brim starts, but I would suggest that you try it on and work out where you think would look best. And then I'm just going to pin this in place. So I have my yarn needle with my white yarn, and I'm just going to come up from the inside of the hat next to my yellow center. And I'm just going to sew around the center to the hat. Now if you want, you can sew a couple of stitches into the ends of the petals to hold them a bit flatter against the hat. I actually prefer the look where the flower sort of looks like it's coming off the hat, so I'm going to leave mine, but that's up to you. And there's the daisy hat complete. To start making the watermelon, I'm going to start with a magic ring. So I'm just going to grab my yarn. And then I'm going to double crochet 6 into my magic ring. So I'm going to wrap my yarn around, go into the ring, pull my yarn through. Now I've got 3 loops on my hook. I'm going to pull through the first 2 loops and then pull through the second 2 loops. And I'm going to repeat that 5 more times until I have 6. Now I'm going to pull my magic ring closed. I'm now going to chain 3. And I'm going to turn my work. I'm now going to double crochet into the same stitch that my chain is coming out of. That chain 3 is going to count as my first double crochet of this round. So now I have 2. I'm going to increase, so double crochet 2 in every stitch around until I'm left with 12 stitches. For my third row, I'm going to chain 3 again. I'm going to turn my work, and then I'm going to double crochet into the same stitch that my chain 3 is coming out of. Then I'm going to double crochet 1 into the next stitch. I'm going to double crochet increase, so double crochet 2 in the next stitch. And I'm going to double crochet 1 into the next stitch. So I'm going to repeat that pattern, so double crochet 2 in one stitch and then double crochet 1 in the next stitch 4 more times until I'm left with 18 stitches. My final stitch, which is going to be a single double crochet, is going to be in the top of this chain 3 here. And before I finish it, so I'm going to go through the first 2 loops. Before I finish it, I'm going to change to my white yarn. So I'm going to pull my white yarn through those 2 loops and pull it tight. I'm then going to chain 2 and turn. I'm going to single crochet into the same stitch that my chain 2 is coming out of. I'm then going to single crochet 2 and I'm going to increase, so single crochet 2 into the next stitch. And then I'm going to single crochet 2 again. I'm going to repeat that pattern, so increase and then single crochet 2 in the next 2 stitches 4 more times until I'm left with 24 stitches. My final stitch, which is going to just be a normal single crochet, is going to go in the top of this chain 3. And before I finish, so I've got my 2 loops left on this hook, I'm going to change to my green yarn. So I'm going to pull my green yarn through these 2 loops, I'm going to pull it tight, and then I'm going to chain 2 again. And I'm going to turn my work. I'm going to half double crochet into the same stitch that this chain 2 is coming out of. I'm then going to half double crochet 3 in the next 3 stitches. And I'm going to half double crochet increase, so 2 in the same stitch. And then I'm going to half double crochet in the next 3 stitches. I'm going to repeat that pattern, so half double crochet increase and then half double crochet 3 in the next 3 stitches 4 more times until I'm left with 30 stitches. My final stitch, which is going to be a normal half double crochet, I'm going to go in the top of this chain 2 here. I'm then going to fasten off. So I'm going to cut my yarn and I'm going to pull that through. So that's my watermelon so far. I'm just going to weave in all of the strands, except for one of the pinky red strands and one of the green strands that we're going to use for sewing the watermelon to the hat. Now that I've finished that, I'm just going to add the seeds. So I just need a length of black yarn. I'm going to thread my needle. And I'm going to put a knot in the end. I'm then going to embroider 5 seeds around the wedge over rounds 2 and 3. So I'm going to bring my yarn up in the center to start with. And I'm going to go to between the stitches above. I'm then going to do one at the side about 2 to 3 stitches away. And a final one about 2 stitches from the top. I'm then going to repeat that on the other side, so about 2 to 3 stitches away and about 2 stitches from the top. Okay, so there's my watermelon slice. I'm just going to show you how to make the seeds stand out a bit more, but this is an optional step. So if you're happy with your watermelon as it looks now, leave it at that, weave in your end, and you're ready to attach it to your hat. So to make your seeds stand out, I'm just going to come out at the bottom of one of these black lines. I'm then going to make a French knot. So I'm going to hold my yarn and my yarn needle close to the work. And let me just try and hold this a bit closer. I'm going to wrap the yarn, so the end closest to the work, I'm going to wrap around the needle 2 to 3 times, like that. And then I'm going to push my needle through. And I'm going to pull all the way until I get a knot in the end of my strand. And then I'm just going to go back into the same hole I came through. I'm not going to pull hard because otherwise your knot will disappear through to the other side of your work. And there's my first seed. I'm now going to come up the next one. And I'm going to repeat that process. So I'm going to wrap the yarn that's closest to my work around the needle 2 to 3 times, Depends on how thick you want it. I'm doing it 3 times. And then you're going to pull your needle through your work, all the way through, until you're left with a knot. Pull tight. And then you're going to go back into your work, but this time you're not going to pull too tight, so you don't pull the knot through to the other side. And I'm going to repeat that on the other 3 seeds. So that's my watermelon slice. I'm just going to weave in my end and it's ready to sew onto the hat. You might want to try your hat on and hold the watermelon up to your head to see where it looks best. So I'm just going to put it just slightly above this brim line here, and I'm going to pin it in place there. I'm now going to use my yarn tails to sew the watermelon to the hat. So for the green part, I'm just going to use the green yarn tail, and for the red part, the red yarn tail. And finally, there's my watermelon hat complete. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, please remember to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to see any of my future uploads. I upload new crochet videos every Saturday. I'll see you in the next one.